Okay, well, welcome. This is Willamette Week's endorsement interview for Congressional District 3, correct? Okay, great. I'm going to start by asking each of you to just take 1 or 2 minutes to introduce yourselves to our listeners, tell us a little bit about your professional history, your civic involvement, if you've sat on any advisory boards or volunteered, and then finally why you're running for office. Representative, let's start with you.
Sure. So Maxine Dexter, I use she, her pronouns. I'm a former state representative for House District 33. Very proud mother to 2 birds that we've launched in the last few years, and a physician. I'm a pulmonary and critical care physician. So lived, worked, and taken care of people in Congressional District 3 for almost 17 years now. And prior to running for office, was a volunteer and a sort of a community action coordinator in Portland Public Schools around different issues, but then have served since 2020, I should say.
Great. And why are you running for office?
I am desperately committed to making sure that working families have the opportunities that I had as a child growing up in a working family, having access to affordable education, good, well-funded public schools, a union job that was able to pay the rent in an urban environment. I don't see that for my patients. I don't see it for my children. We need to do better at the federal level, investing in things that local and state governments can't do on their own, and also creating pathways for states to be innovators.
Great, thank you. Joanna.
Yeah, my name is Joanna Harbert, and I am an attorney by trade.
What kind of attorney?
Right now I'm doing mostly estate planning and some family law advice, but I used to have a general practice firm where I did a variety of things, from forming businesses to property disputes, and a lot of family law and trust back then as well. And so, I've done quite a bit of volunteering. I was part of a couple committees in the town of Estacada for their downtown revitalization and their branding. That was a while ago. It's probably time for them to rebrand. And then I've been involved with volunteering for nonprofits since I was a teenager, and I helped form a couple of the nonprofits that are still going in the town of Estacada. And so those are the volunteer work that I've been doing. And I am running for office because I think I can make a difference. I can go back and represent this district with new options and a new direction.
And what are those options and new direction that you want to take?
Well, we need to fix the economy. Technically, this district has had the same type of leadership since, actually I don't remember when it began, but before Representative Blumenauer, it was one write-in, and so it's had Democrats. So to go back with Republican principles and represent the district that way.
And what are those Republican principles?
Representing the people, smaller government, putting things back into the hands of the people instead of the government.
Okay.
Or some of them. I mean, we don't want to be here all day listing all the principles, but.
Could you just give us the nonprofits, the names of the nonprofits?
Some of them, Estacada Development Association, Estacada Area Community Events, Estacada Community Foundation. I'd have to go back into my memory to get the ones in college and high school.
Representative, given the kind of polarization on the federal level between Republicans and Democrats, what do you think you can, actually feasibly accomplish in the next 4 years if you're elected?
Yeah, and not to correct you, but I'm not a representative anymore, so
Maxine.
Yes,
it's weird. It's hard to.
Yeah, so please do call me Maxine. I've proven my ability to do that in Salem. Landmark legislation, Senate Bill 100, was reconfigured with our work in 2023.
And what is SB 100?
Senate Bill 100 was the land use policy that really is protected forest farms, public engagement, all those things that really led to the housing challenges that we've had in some ways, because we did goal 1, which was making sure public engagement was a priority, and not prioritizing goal 10, which was housing. So we had a bipartisan group of folks who, at the beginning, we discussed what was what were the things you must have, what were the things you couldn't support, and then we came to agreement and passed a really robust policy. That was Republicans, Democrats, progressives, moderates. It was very diligent in making sure that we agreed on principles and outcomes, and then made a policy that could fix that. My vice chair was Jeff Helfrich, was there every step of the way with me. We made sure that we had no surprises, we kept our word, and that we centered the people of Oregon in that work. And I think, honestly, most people run for office because they want to serve their community in some way. I'm going to go to Congress and work across the aisle and make sure that we get resilient policy passed. If I'm in the minority, that's the only way to get policy passed. If we win the majority back, then that is still a principle that will guide me.
So obviously the U.S. Congress is a bit of a different ballgame than the state.
Yep.
I mean, we're a heavily Democratic state, and if you win, you're going to be entering into a field that's much more 50-50.
Sure.
I mean, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I again think that it's giving people the benefit of the doubt, that they're there for the right reasons. Trust but verify. I'm not going to be naive about that, but we need to make sure that we bring everyone's voices to the table and work together. And of course, that's going to be obligatory if I'm in the minority, but even if we do have a small majority, like that is absolutely how we will get good policy done. The other thing is working with people who are doing the things that I want to engage in: healthcare, environment, working families, like going to the folks who do have established relationships and leverage in Congress and helping make sure that I work on the policies that I care about.
Lucas, you're probably better equipped to ask this question, but fentanyl overdose rates went down nationwide, but Oregon's were still the second highest.
Yeah, went up by 22%.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is that fentanyl came to Oregon later than it did many other areas of the country. East Coast, Pittsburgh, many East Coast cities had already started to see plateauing, if not some declining, at the time that it was really hitting Oregon. It happened at the most inopportune time with COVID at the same time, and also ballot measure 110 being about to be implemented. It was a disaster, and so I absolutely am concerned about it, but I think if it follows the trajectory of other cities, that not only have we done things to put Narcan into the public spaces and trying to increase opportunity for treatment, but the natural evolution of this is that we can get it under control to a certain degree to start seeing those declines that we're seeing other
So we just
places.
have to wait it out? I mean, it seems like that's a kind of unsatisfactory.
I don't think we're just waiting it out. I mean, these are people's lives, as you know. These are people's brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers that are dying, and so there is not a single death that we can just be like, well, that's just how it's going to go. But the reality is that what is out there is uncontrollable right now. It's coming in faster than we can possibly.
Here's another way of putting this. I mean, you were a leadership position in the state while this epidemic was taking off here. And so if you could go back, and what do you think the state could have done differently during that time to have better
I love
this?
Very much appreciate that question. Number one, ballot measure 110 was written by the people. That was something that people in Oregon wanted us to take a public health approach. That is still something that I support. The thing that we didn't do is make sure that we had treatment options, that we had the services ready before we decriminalized. And that was, implementation is also on government, and we totally failed in that regard. The other thing is that it was short-sighted not to create some laws around public use of illicit substances that had been decriminalized. One of the number one things that people were upset about when I was knocking on doors and talking to my constituents is the fact that people were using in public. That was something that very clearly could have been addressed from the very beginning. And when we decriminalized it, people just, I think, failed to realize that that decriminalization would also decriminalize public use.
So can you walk us through the process? Because of course we didn't end up criminalizing public use, we ended up recriminalizing possession, which doesn't sound to me like your ideal outcome. So what happened there? Why didn't the state take that tack?
I think that we lost the trust, and I know that we lost the trust of the people because we implemented really poorly. And when you lose trust, this is, as a parent, a very familiar thing, that you pull back the opportunities for freedom. And when we lost the trust of voters and people in our city and throughout the state that we can be trusted to provide the services and the supports needed to truly address addiction as the public health issue that it is, then people wanted us to recriminalize it. And you know as well as I do that there was going to be a very strong push to have a measure passed again that would have put everything in jeopardy that we worked on to try to address this in a public health manner. So I think that the negotiations were the way they needed to be in a true bipartisan fashion and addressing the loss of trust that we had clearly needed to regain.
If you were elected to this seat, I mean, you've watched how Measure 110 has played out as well. Obviously, we recriminalized possession. What would you do differently?
From a congressional point, that's really a state issue. So congressionally, we can't really go in and tell the states what they can and cannot criminalize. I don't know if we want to start getting into that where one size fits all, because every state is different. But what federally we can do is bring resources in, find out the states that are handling things well, bring those resources to the states that aren't. Because other states are ahead of the game in having the numbers go down, find out what it is they're doing, and bring that information to the people here so that they can take a look at it and make sure that the local or state law and court law legislators have the information that they need to see what's working around the country. Because that's one thing about our country is we have 50 different little incubators to see what works and what doesn't, and we should be pulling from all of them to see what can help us in our time of crisis.
Is there a city or a state that you have researched that you think has done a particularly good job in curbing the fentanyl crisis?
That's the sad part. It's such a huge crisis. It's kind of hard to figure out who is doing it very well. I think one of the things that we could do at the national level to curb it is to secure the border and stop having it come in through that method. And that's one thing that we can do in Congress, because the border is a federal issue, not a state issue.
So what would you do with the border that the current administration is not currently doing?
We need to go back to actually building a wall where it's feasible, bringing in technology where the wall is not feasible to watch for things coming in, like drones and things like that. We need to be having enough resources on the border so that when people do come, we're able to search to see what they have, and if they have fentanyl, confiscate it there at the border. Those are the type of things that we can do.
Do you think Joe Biden won the 2020 election or no?
I have no idea. There were several questions about that, and there was never really an official audit to know. So it's really hard to know what happened in some of those swing states, because I don't live there. I believe he won Oregon.
So
I can answer for Oregon, but I can't answer for other locations, because...
So you believe there was voting tampering that went on?
I believe there's voting tampering all the time. We just found out that there are illegal immigrants who are registered to vote. We have no idea how many of those people have actually voted. I do believe... The question is there enough to actually change the outcome? And there's no way to know without an audit, a true forensic audit.
So I think the state said the number of people that voted. I don't remember
3?
the actual number. Was it 3? So
7?
do you not
But they're
trust
not done with the audit. I mean, the first number was there was 300, and now there's like 1,200, and I don't know. They're not done with the audit. So until the audit's done, it's too premature to say exactly how many. But like I said, the question is, how is there enough to affect an outcome? And so far, there's not enough to affect an outcome. Well, I mean, I guess if they voted it for PCPs, it just takes 3 votes for a PCP. So I guess they all could have affected that race. But other than that race, there's not another race 3 voters could affect.
You're a Donald Trump supporter, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe that the January 6th attack on the Capitol was a threat to democracy?
Well, first of all, we have a republic. So, but I believe that any type of grievance we have against our government should be done peacefully, without violence, without damage to property, without damage to people. No violence. And so whenever it crosses the line to that effect, it can, wherever it is, it can have a very negative effect on being able to express ourselves in our country. because a lot of times when you have that, it will lead to can lead to restricting people feeling comfortable going out the next time to peacefully protest. And so I believe that it was very sad that it happened. The way it happened, it should have remained peaceful and off the grounds or outside of the building with no violence is the way we're supposed to redress our grievances.
Okay, thanks. Maxine, Earl Blumenauer did hold the seat, well, I guess technically still does, for many years. What did he do wrong?
Earl Blumenauer has been an amazing lawmaker. He's been an amazing constituent supporter in this district. I think his legendary status is well earned. I think what I would say I would do differently is focusing a bit more, and this is as somebody who hasn't served in the same capacities as he did at the state and county level within the district that he was eventually elected, is to be more connected with town halls and constituent outreach. I think that is an opportunity that, especially as a healthcare provider and somebody who takes care of people every day, I feel very strongly that I need to be highly available and present, not just in my office where people can come in, but going out into community and engaging with people who aren't always able to come into a building with many challenges for folks. Another one is constituent services in the same regard. Earl's done amazing amounts of work, so in no way am I trying to suggest that he hasn't, but that is a priority for my office, is going to be making sure that we have field workers and caseworkers who really are engaged. There's a lot of people who don't realize that you can pick up the phone and call your congressional representative when you need help getting Social Security or VA benefits or FEMA dollars, when you've been in a tragic devastating, with our wildfires. That was something that I helped my patients connect to their representatives to help.
Is there anything legislation-wise you would have done differently or pushed more on or pushed less on, or?
Yeah, I think livable communities is something that Earl has been dedicated to throughout. He and I have conversations about our differences there. I think healthy communities is something that I am going to be invested in, and clean air is one thing that I think it's very intersectional, that his work on bike transit and local transit has led to that, but I think more particulate matter and really looking at the health effects of air quality is going to be something that I...
So did he not do...
It's not that he didn't do it, it's just done differently. I think livable communities as a result oftentimes will have less particulate matter if you're really investing in mass transit and bike and ped. I want to be more intentional about renewable energy being, renewable diesel being something that we convert to and support on a significant level, making sure that indirect sources of air pollution are regulated. That's a state issue, but could also be done at the federal issue.
Okay, thank you. Where do you stand on the war on Gaza? Do you want to see a ceasefire, or do you not support a ceasefire at this time?
I've been supporting a ceasefire for many, many months, so that is absolutely every day without a ceasefire is a day that far too many people are harmed.
Okay, thank you. Where do you stand on the war in Gaza?
I believe that a ceasefire with the condition that all the hostages, if there are any still alive, we don't know if they're still alive, are released, is very good to have. I mean, nobody wants the loss of innocent civilians, and that has happened first with the initial attack, and then in war, it should be avoidable, but somehow it's not, and so we need to do everything we can to put an end to the violence there.
Okay, thank you. Maxine, in the spring primary, the AIPAC spent a lot of money to help you win this seat. Why do you think that is, and how do you feel about that in retrospect?
So the first thing I'll say is the voters made a clear decision that race was decided pretty definitively. And without their support, I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you. Reform of how we run our our campaigns that are not publicly funded needs to be addressed. And so that disproportionate investment brought one perspective to the forefront that undermined voters' ability to have their voices heard in the same way. I think that it is a problem in my race. I think it's a problem in races across our country. So without question, what happened was not as much about me particularly. I think I was a viable candidate who could, frankly, beat the candidate that they really didn't want to have win.
Well, there's a reason that there must be a reason they put that much money towards your race. Whether it was about Sushila or was it, why were you the preferred choice, do you believe, of AIPAC over Sushila?
I don't think that is the hard question. I think that was always about her sister's representation in Congress and assuming that there would be similar representation. And I am not in any regard an expert on any of those issues, but that was very clear that it was more about positions that they suspected Sushila would take and not being supportive of Israel as a ally and somebody who needed to be supported.
It seems like by default, though, that would mean that AIPAC had seen you as a bigger supporter of Israel.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm going to ask this question of both of you, actually, if you were to have coffee with Marjorie Taylor Greene right now, what would you say to her? What would you want to talk about? Let's start with you, Joanna.
Well, thank you for that very interesting question. I had no way to prepare for that one. I don't know. Sometimes people are different than the way they present themselves. She seems like a very firebrand, but I have a feeling that she'd be more personable maybe in person. But I would just treat her like I plan on treating all of them, treat them with respect, and just have a conversation about maybe common interest. Some of the things she says and does I don't agree with, so I don't know.
What are a couple of those things?
Well, one of the ones that comes to mind is the time that she brought up somebody's eyelashes in a meeting, and then somehow it developed into like 5th grade in the middle of Congress, and people were insulting her. She was insulting. It just went downhill, and so I don't think we need to be doing that. We have a very important job. We need to be focused on representing our people and not trying to insult each other. And you can't ever get anything done. How are you going to ever walk across the aisle when you're insulting the entire part of that committee that's the Democrats from that committee? How are you going to get anything done? And what was the purpose of that? I have no idea if the person was wearing fake eyelashes or not, but who cares? They put so many standards on it. I've been told how many times I don't dress appropriately to run for Congress. I need to wear different shoes. I need to do this different because I don't represent what women should look like in Congress. So I'm not going to go back there and judge what other women are doing because they should be themselves. And so for her to bring out someone's eyelashes was just very wrong.
Thank you. Maxine.
It is interesting to me how many times people ask this question, like, what would you say to Marjorie Taylor Greene? So I think...
Who else has asked this?
I'm totally surprised about it.
Original.
No,
I guess
so
not.
It's original within maybe the media, but it is absolutely, it's probably the #1 question people ask me, what are you going to say when you see Marjorie Taylor Greene? So I think that says a lot about what she has cultivated, is a notoriety in my mind that has elevated herself above the position that she has, that it feels very invested in herself, and I think it's working. If she's out there trying to build her brand, that it seems to be working. So if I had the opportunity to sit down and have a friendly conversation, I might ask her first, do I know you from Instagram? But after hopefully getting her to laugh and maybe be a little bit self-effacing, I would want to know if she has children and why she ran for office.
So you wouldn't talk about policy or what you believe?
I don't think that that's going to be a productive conversation for me and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That's fair. I'd like each of you to ask your opponent a question, and please make it a question that is answerable. Joanna, why don't you ask Maxine a question?
In the Oregonian interview, I already asked her the main question I wanted to ask her. I guess the question I have is, the way this district was redrawn, it has a lot of rural, but the rural doesn't have a lot of people. And so basically, a candidate can win this race with just Multnomah County and just the urban center. And so my question is, what are your plans to represent the rural side of the district?
Yeah, and I hope that it's clear from what I said at the beginning, it's going to be showing up. I've been in Hood River, I've been in Gresham, I've been obviously in Portland, but showing up and walking the orchards with the farmers in Hood River and talking with people who are trying to house their agricultural workers, like being there talking to our ag workers who don't have affordable housing and childcare and understanding those issues. I was in with developers in Hood River just recently talking about that. So it's not just Hood River, obviously Estacada and Sandy and all along the district's boundaries. There's tremendous opportunity for people to be heard, and I will show up in community to make sure that they are heard.
Great, thank you. Maxine, a question for Joanna?
So if you were elected to this seat on January 6th, when it's time to confirm the election, if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are those folks who are elected, would you verify that, certify that with your vote?
I will certify whoever wins the election. If they're the ones who win the election, they should be the ones who are certified. And if Trump and Vance win, they should be the one who's certified.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
And I had heard you talking about Trump's election and that there needed to be potentially some more auditing or whatnot. Would you take the votes at face value on that day, or would you want further information before you'd be willing to certify?
It's kind of hard to say. The 2020 election was so odd because of COVID. They had states that were doing mail-in who never did it before. So I would hope any state that is continuing that has fixed the glitches that were in that system, so we don't even have that question come up again. So that's my hope. But each state would need to be, I think, certified by themselves, and any state that has any question, if there's something that actually has evidence that there's something that's questionable, regardless of who wins. Let's say Trump wins, and the question is, was there cheating on his bet? Not saying he cheated, but cheating to make him be the winner versus cheating to make the Kamala Harris the winner. Both sides, if there's a legitimate question, I'm not going to just certify one state where there's legitimate questions. But if there's not legitimate questions, then of course it should be certified for who the actual winner is, regardless of which side is the winner.
Great. Lucas, any questions?
Yeah, Maxine, I wanted to ask you, I was deep in the fine print of your website, and you were talking about how you've been the champion for value-based payments in Oregon. And, the state recently released a report showing that, private insurance really hadn't followed through on any of their promises that they had made to you in the legislature. So I guess I'm just wondering, I don't know if you're aware of that report, what was your reaction to the report, and do you feel like the state should have approached this differently based on it?
So I haven't read the report, just in full transparency. What I believe is simpler and more enforceable is actually a global budget, and putting value-based payment is one step towards that, as I know you understand. Truly putting the system on a budget, making sure that we deliver care and we're held accountable for outcomes. So if we decide that we truly want value-based care, it will not be fee-for-service. It will be based on outcomes that are measurable and controllable by the system. And then the system gets the amount of dollars that are allocated, currently at twice per capita that any other industrialized nation, any nation, is spending on their healthcare. So we can spend extraordinary amounts of money and still save some money over time, which is still what value-based payment is trying to do, is to get to value, which is not just spending within the boundaries of a budget, but to actually get the outcomes that we desire. And that is not what we are reimbursing for right now. We're reimbursing for low value, no value care, expensive care. We're not doing the preventative care and the triaging and prioritization that we would do if we were truly on a global value-based payment.
I guess to make this question a little bit wonky and broader, Oregon has always, I think, largely been considered an innovator in the healthcare space. And I think if we look at the numbers recently, we're seeing massive increases in cost of care. Basically, we're not seeing the results that I think a lot of people wanted to see in Oregon. And so, I mean, you can push back on me there if you want to, but I mean, my question is, you're going to the national, the federal level, like what lessons are you going to take out of your experience in Oregon to try and fix what is very much a national problem?
Yeah, it is absolutely a national problem, and the CCO model actually is working. We have Medicaid members who are getting better outcomes for less money. So Oregon, in that regard, has used value-based payment to drive better outcomes and more affordability. I do push back on that. So commercial plans and others are frankly subsidizing a system where we underfund Medicare and Medicaid. And that is true in Oregon, it's true in every other place, and there's only a few levers you can pull in increasing cost to consumers or decreasing amount of care, or charging more to the payers is what is going to continue to happen unless we truly get value to be at the center. So it is not in any way a perfect system, but I am strongly of the belief that a cross-market global budget is the way to innovate and truly move towards value-based payment away from fee-for-service. And it, as Joanna said, like we have 50 states that can be the incubators and pilot project places of work. Oregon should be one of those, and so getting CMMS waivers so that we can do that with Medicare beneficiaries included is absolutely a priority for me.
Joanna, I want to get your opinion on this too. How would you want to address kind of the crisis, we could say, in the cost of healthcare in America, if it is a problem?
Well, it's kind of a very, it's a good question. I don't have fully developed plans on how exactly we can do it across the entire country, because like I said, it's the whole 50 states again. I do know the system isn't working and we do need to make changes. I know people who suffer from the results of a bad system, and I'm basically open to listening to the ideas of what is working across the country and formulating things that will work. But again, we can't force states to go along with stuff. There's some things that we can. I mean, clearly when it comes to national defense, that is the federal prerogative. That's where we get to say, okay, we're gonna, your group is called up now. You have to go fight this war. Hopefully we don't have any wars. It looks like we're headed there, but hopefully it doesn't go there. But with regard to there has to be states that are doing it better than other states, and that's where we would start looking for options.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Nope, I don't
Fun
think so.
question?
Fun question. What were you known for in high school?
Do you want to go first?
Doesn't matter.
I was voted most dependable along with two other guys. One became a
Most
fireman.
dependable. Nice.
Mm-hmm. One
Wait,
became
what
a
were the
fireman.
others? Yeah.
Huh? And the other one, he went on to acting, and now he is a real estate agent. So.
All right. Maxine.
I was a very busy person and had to have a car, so I was one of the few people who had a car on my basketball team. So I guess you could say I was known for being able to fit 6 very large basketball players into a 1980 Honda Civic hatchback, which is an extremely small car.
Nice, nice. Well, thank you both for coming in. We really do appreciate it.